Welcome to this Talking Shop webinar with Bob Beauchamp and William Grove Fanning. Completing project work often requires OPWL practitioners to revise existing deliverables at the same time they're creating new ones, all while planning their next steps. How can practitioners be at three places at one time? Trello is a free online project management tool that can help you do this. During their time with us, Bob and William will share their experiences using Trello. Specifically, they will introduce Trello, describe how Bob uses Trello at work, discuss its pros and cons, describe how William and his teammates in Team Tutor Training Hawaii use Trello for their ID project. They'll mention other resources, they'll specify considerations, and of course, they'll answer your questions. We envision much more a dialogue than the traditional lecture with questions at the end format. Bob and William, we're delighted to have you with us today.
Well, hello everyone, this is Bob, and I'll be kicking things off, so let me get my PowerPoint pulled up here. Alright, well, like I said, I'm Bob Beauchamp, and I want to talk to you guys a little bit about how I use Trello at work in my design shop. Now, most of us here have probably worked in a team of just two people, and working and communicating with a team of just two people is pretty easy, right? Look at these two here. They're high-fiving, they're happy, getting the stuff done, keeping things organized. Now picture a virtual team with a bunch of people, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people spread across the US, even across the globe, multiple time zones. Emails start flying around. People forget to reply all. It's not always clear who's responsible for what. Right? It can be hard to tell where things are on a project timeline with a big group. And working in teams can be frustrating. Things can get disorganized, especially if you don't use technology to your advantage. Now, while there's hundreds of tools out there to manage teams and projects, William and I are going to focus on just one of them, Trello. And we're going to sprinkle in a little bit of Google Drive as well as that proverbial cherry on top. So like Steve mentioned, we're going to show you a couple of perspectives on how to use Trello. And so I'm going to talk about how the learning and development department team that I work in uses Trello, and then William's going to talk about how he used Trello to be successful in his OPWL 537 project class. So just a quick warning before we go too much further, we could probably spend 3, 4, 5, 6 hours just talking about Trello, how to customize it, fit it into your needs, play with all of its features. So I tried to boil my stuff down here just to focus on the features and capabilities that we use to be productive and efficient on the job and in the classroom. But once you guys get your hands on Trello, if you've never used it before, you're going to find that you're going to be able to really maximize a lot of tools out there that it's going to let you do. So what is Trello? And I really tried to boil it down to its basic elements. And in its simplest form, it's a task and project management tool that's comprised of boards, lists, and cards. So throughout this webinar, you're going to see just how powerful those three elements are. And I know you're thinking, yeah, boards, lists, cards, they don't sound very exciting. How is this tool going to help me? But the great thing about Trello is that when you combine those three elements, along with the built-in features and tools that they have, you're going to find that it's a very powerful and easy to use project management tool. And as long as you have an internet connection, you can use Trello, which is another nice thing. It's available via any of your web browsers, from Chrome, Firefox, Internet Explorer, whatever you want to use. You can just go to Trello.com and log in. There's an app for your iPhone and Android phone, and they even have a native desktop app for your Mac and PC computer. So it's available anywhere you are. And I'm going to start by breaking down the basic features and functionality of Trello, and then William and I are going to dive into some live Trello boards and cards and show you what it actually looks like in a live setting. So let's start with the board. So the board represents a project or a place to keep track of your project information. And it's where you're going to start collaborating with your team. You can have personal boards and team boards, which is another great, nice feature there. Now, a board is nothing without lists. All right, so we're going to start to build this here. Lists keep the board organized. They can be used to categorize and represent different phases, workflows, processes of a project. Right, you can have as many lists as you want, and they just get arranged from left to right across the board. All you have to do as well as click and drag the list to move it around the board. So in a few minutes, I'll show you how to do that, but I could grab that pipeline list and I can move it anywhere I want down the right edge of that board. All right, so then there's cards. Cards are added to lists and represent tasks and ideas. You can think of them as post-it notes or index cards on a corkboard. So you can picture that. Cards can be moved from list to list as they progress down a project workflow. All you have to do is drag and drop. So once that Sales Foundations 3 card is in the analysis phase, I just click it and drag it. And so I'll show you guys how to do that in a little bit too. How you guys use the cards and lists is completely up to you. That's another thing you'll like about Trello, is you can customize it to fit your needs. You can keep things simple. If you want, you could have a board with just 3 lists: to do, doing, and done, right? And cards underneath those lists that represent those tasks. Or you can really lay out a more detailed process or workflow, like your OPWL project classes or the ADDIE process, and you can have a lot of lists and a lot of cards, so it scales very nicely. You don't have to have something really complex to make this work well for you. Then we get to the back of the card. All right, the back of the card is where you keep track of details about that task or whatever that card represents. And it's here is where you really start to collaborate with your team. As you can see, there's a lot of functionality on the back of this card. So I'm going to explain the basics and go through some of the things you're seeing on this card. And then we'll flip over to some live cards, and I'll show you some of the stuff in action in a few minutes. And William will do the same thing with his board as well. All right, so let's talk about the description section. So in the description section, you can add more specific information about the card. It's really going to depend on how you use the card, whether or not you're going to use the description section. Some cards are pretty self-explanatory, but other cards might require more detail about what step of a process this represents. The Sales Foundations 3 card, I probably want a description about what this course or project is about, and I could put it here. Next is the add column on the right hand side. And the add section has a ton of tools and options. It's one of the most powerful sections of the card because here you can add your coworkers or team members to the card through the members button. Adding a member to a card is a way that you can assign them tasks. So if I wanted someone to be in charge of this Sales Foundations 3 class, I could add someone in my department to this and say, hey, you own this course now. You can even tag people in comments here, as long as they're a member of your board. You could use that @ symbol, ampersand, and you can tag them. So it's a really nice feature to be able to communicate back and forth and collaborate with your team. Next is labels. I really like the labels feature you see there on the right. You're going to see that William and I use labels on our cards a lot. A label is a way of using color coding to categorize a card by type. There's 10 different color codes to choose from, as well as a colorless label option. You can name the labels if you want to. A card can have multiple labels. It's not limited to one, so you can really stay organized with those labels. Checklists are really cool. You can add checklists to cards. That's going to help you track those sub-steps of a task. You're going to see that checklists are used a lot on the boards and cards that we're going to pull up. You have the ability to even copy checklists from one card to another or from one board to another. And you can tag people in checklists as well. And next you see there is due dates. You can add due dates to cards if you're using the calendar power-up, and we'll talk more about power-ups in a second. The card and the due date is going to automatically copy over to the Trello calendar feature. So any member who's been added to the card will receive a notification within 24 hours when it's due based on that due date you set there. Right? And the calendar icon is actually going to turn red when the card is past due to give you more visibility in your tasks. And then you can add attachments to cards. You see that's the last one there in that red box. You can add them from your computer. You can drag and drop, or it links up with cloud storage services like Dropbox, Box, Google Drive, etc. So it's really easy to get an attachment in there. All right, so let's move on. I don't see a lot of questions coming through the chat, so I'm going to pop over to actions, the action section. So the first one there, move, lets you move a card from list to list within the same board if you don't feel like dragging and dropping. Dragging and dropping is more fun. You can use the move feature there. From that move button, you can even move a card to a completely different board if you're managing multiple boards. So just because you created a card in one board doesn't mean you can't then move it to something completely separate. Next is copy. Copy is pretty self-explanatory. It'll let you copy this whole card, and it's kind of like a save as or a new copy. So it's really handy if you want to set up a card as a recurring template for topics or to-dos. So you'll find that very handy in your 537 or other project classes using that copy feature when you're getting your board set up. Following. So the following portion of the card is really nice as well. So let's say there's a card on a board and you're not assigned that task. You're not a member of that card, but you still want to know if there's been activity on the card. You don't want to have to remember to go in there and check every day or so. If you come in and click the following button there, you will start to receive notifications when comments get added to the card, when the card moves from one list to another. So that way you can stay up to date on what's going on with that card. Archive, pretty self-explanatory. Archives that card, gets it out of that, your whole board view there. And lastly, at the bottom, you see that Share and More link. Share and More gives you a direct link to that card. So if I wanted to email someone and say, hey, can you go into this Trello card and make an update? I could just click Share and More. I'll see the link for that card, and it's a direct link right to the card, so someone doesn't have to search for it in a Trello board. And each card has its own embed link as well, and each card is going to have its own unique email address. So if I'm emailing my team, I could drop my card's email address in the To section of my email, and anything I send using that card's email address is going to appear as a comment on a card. So you see the back of this card has a ton of functionality and ability to really maximize your team efforts when it comes to working together on projects. All right, add comment. The comment section is where we always use a section to provide status updates, log notes. We will tag each other team members on our team in comments here. So instead of sending emails back and forth, we're going to keep track of things via tagging each other in comments. And as you can see, there's a paperclip. You can attach stuff. You can drop in an emoji. You can tag someone, and you can link to other cards in the comments. Comments are going to be time-stamped as well, which is really nice for accountability, depending on what kind of team structure you got set up and how much stuff you want to track. And lastly, there's the activity section, right? So this is a historical list of all the activity that's happened on the card. It creates a nice timeline of events, keeps tracks of things like, when a card is moved to another list or board, when someone completes a checklist item, you're going to see that. So that's a lot of functionality and just a few things here, but that's a quick overview of the basic features of Trello. So you're going to see all of the stuff in action when we pull up our live Trello boards. But first, I want to talk about how I personally use Trello on the job and how our team uses Trello. So I'm an instructional designer at United Federal Credit Union, and like I said, we use Trello to manage the design projects and courses that we're working on in our shop. We're a fairly small team. We've got 3 instructional designers, 3 training specialists, a technical writer, and a manager. So I'm going to show you the 9 lists that we use to manage our design process so you can see it from that perspective. And so you'll see that the 9 lists that I'm about to pull up really look a lot like the ADDIE process. And I'm going to describe the 9 steps we go through, and then I'll log into my live courses Trello board so you can see what the board actually looks like. But it just presents better as a build like this. So we've got the pipeline card. And the pipeline card is where everything starts, right? This contains courses that we know are upcoming or should be upcoming, right? We'll move them once a a project of ours starts, we're going to move it to the analysis phase once we're really ready to start working on course development. All right, then we're going to have a list called analysis. And our L&D manager is going to move a card from pipeline to analysis when our workload and priority allows us to do so. So once a card is moved into analysis, that's where we assign a lead designer by using the add member functionality there. And in this phase, the lead SME is going to be identified, course objectives are developed. So again, it's sounding a lot like your ADDIE process. Once the course objectives are approved by the manager, the course moves into design. All right, in the design list, all right, you're going to see a list of courses that have the objectives that are approved. It's during this phase that a design plan and storyboard are created. Once those are approved by the manager, the course can move from design to alpha development. Alpha development is where we're in the trenches building the course, using whatever technology we need to use, Captivate, screen recordings, writing facilitator guides, etc. Then we're going to move it into L&D team QA. So once the course has been built and loaded, you're going to see that course move over to this list. So it's time for us to QA the course. We're going to assign the course to our design team and our technical writer. We're going to make sure they send us feedback on that. Once that feedback has been implemented, then the manager gets to review the course. So it goes to L&D manager QA. From there, it goes into beta development. Once the course has been approved internally, it's ready for beta development. All right, and we send the course to our clients for review, and then it moves into launch or implementation. All right, so once the course has been reviewed by the clients and their suggestions have been taken into consideration, the course is ready to be launched. And we're listing here who the course needs to be assigned to. And our last step is evaluation. This is where our launch courses are going to live unless adjustments need to be made. And then we do have a relaunch column that we can move things into. So as you can see, each list that you see on the screen here is labeled in a way that everyone on the team knows exactly what's happening during each phase of the design process. So any one of us on the team can pull up our courses Trello board, and we have full visibility into everything that's going on in our design shop. Is there any questions about the basic functionality before I switch over and show you guys our live board?
We've got some people who are typing questions. So
Okay.
Bud asked, does Trello have any features in terms of graphic capabilities like Gantt charting?
Yes and no. The Gantt charting and all that stuff is not native. You can do it, but it's going to require a power-up. So that's kind of like a plugin that you would apply to the board, and you're limited to one of those per board. So you're going to want to choose which one you want to use. A lot of people are going to go with the calendar power-up.
But if you're a company and you're paying money to use Trello, can you get around the one power-up at a time limit?
You absolutely can. Yeah, you can buy a business license. And but I don't know how much. William, do you know how much the business license is? I never did look into that.
I don't remember. Our company looked into it. I think in the end they decided that they could get by without it. So no, I'm sorry. And I will say there's quite a bit of variability about the various power-ups or plugins. These are effectively mini programs that ride on top of Trello that people design, and so the quality can vary quite a bit. I've looked at 8 or 10 power-ups in the past. I played with a couple Gantt power-ups. I found one that was decent and one that wasn't, but it does have it available.
Monique's question about searching for a lost task or card. I've not played with the searching functionality. Have you, William?
I have not. Is there? Does it? Oh, there is a search function. I've never tried it. Yeah, we could play with it today.
Let me get logged in here and we can give it a shot. So if you've never used Trello, all you have to do is go to Trello.com and sign up. So you'll see the sign up button in the upper right hand corner. And once you click sign up, you have a few choices. You can either create an account with your name and email address, but I know a lot of us on the call here have our Boise State Gmail accounts. So instead of going through this process, all you have to do is click sign up with Google. And if you have multiple Google accounts, it's going to ask you which one you want to use. As you can see, I've got a couple here. I'm just going to say I want to sign up with my Boise State Gmail account. And in 2 clicks, I've just signed up, and now I have a Trello account. So that's the way I recommend you doing it when you get signed up for the very first time. As you can see, I already have some boards here. So like I said, you could have multiple boards. You can really have as many boards as you want. But your very first time logging in, you're going to have a welcome board. It's this green board right here. So I highly recommend you play around with the welcome board. And as you can see, we've got a couple lists out here. It says stuff to try. This is a list. This is another list. Add a list. So just like you saw in my screenshots. You can even drag and move these lists around if you'd like. So you can completely drag these things around. Underneath the list is a card. So if I wanted to, it says, this is a card. Drag it into tried it to show it's done. Boom. I just drag it over there, and that's all there is to it. Up at the top, you have a choice between personal and private. So if I was setting this up for my class, I could click private and switch this over to a team board and go through the process of making this a team board with my project class team name. And then from there, I can invite the rest of my team to join this board. So that way we can all see this board together. Once you click on a card, as you can see, you can add an image there. Here's your description as well. But I want to show you guys, and we're going to demo a lot of this functionality. I do want to jump over to my actual live board. So let me switch accounts here. And this is our courses board that our team actually uses. So on that PowerPoint, I had the build, and we go from pipeline to analysis design. And so you guys are actually seeing a live snapshot of all the projects we're working on. And I just grabbed the descriptions for that PowerPoint right off of these guys right here. And one of the tricks we're using is we just added a card. And the description of the card is what you are seeing over here. When we started using Trello, we had all of these lists, but we all kind of forgot what exactly is happening. We all know what happens in analysis and design and development and that stuff, but we needed to know what exactly happens in our shop at that analysis phase. So we just created a card, and in that description, everybody in the team knows exactly what's supposed to be happening there. So that was one of the huge advantages to Trello, is that we're able to see what happens at each stage. If I just scroll down, and you can see how we're using the labels. We're using the labels here. The blue ones are like our web-based training, e-learning courses. Yellow is instructor-led training. This is a course I'm working on right now. You guys can see the checklist items. So I'm just about to launch this course. We use the description field, so if anytime anyone on the team wants to pull this up and know what the Sales Foundations course is all about, they can read a description of that course. As you can see, there's some comments in here, and we're really maximizing the functionality here. I'm going to switch back over to my PowerPoint real quick. Got one more thing to share, and I'll kick things over to William. So I want to talk about pros and cons. Boy, it's not liking it. You know what, William? I'm gonna kick things over to you, and we'll get the right one pulled up once you're all done.
Okay, well, I'll pull my screen up and we can move over to that. Let me get the right screen pulled up. So Bob, thanks for the introduction, providing us with an overview of, really the components that make up Trello. And one thing I was thinking about while I was listening to you and looking at how your company uses Trello is, I think one of the central concepts to keep in mind with its functionality is that it excels in helping move projects through a process. And so think about the board as really a process-oriented as its primary function tool in which you can have stuff at a starting point and then you can have your end point and you just move things through it. And let me just emphasize again, before I show you the board I use for our class, that it's an ideal way, particularly for the OPWL 537 instructional design course, where you have people all over the country who are working full-time jobs, have very different schedules. Trello provides a unified communication and coordination platform. And we all need, when we're working on teams, we need to have the ability to jump in after not checking in for a day or a day and a half or half a day, and not knowing where the team is at with something. And as many of you can, I think, appreciate, my experience with email is that after a while I get lost. Not after a while, very quickly I get lost. So particularly when I'm sending attachments through email as well. So Trello really just gives the whole team a place where you can keep things and find them as you need them. So I wanted to build on Bob's introduction, and I wanted to show you how my team, which is Tutor Training Hawaii, I took the class last semester, OPWL 537, how we adapted it for the course. And so you're looking at our board from last semester, but what I've done with the board is I've updated it with, Steve was kind enough to provide me with the due dates for your assignments for those of you in this webinar who are in Steve's section at least. I don't know if Bud's section has the same due dates, but I've added the due dates for the spring semester, but I kept all of our comments that we did for the whole semester. So let's just look again at the components here. And let me get my screen up one more time too to make sure there's no questions. Okay, sounds great. So as you can see here again, the way our team ended up setting this up is a bit different than Bob. It's not the ADDIE process as much as you have assignments and you have meetings, you have lots of them, and you have to have a way to organize both the deliverable assignments and the meetings to hit your deadlines. And so your first, here on the left, this first list is your upcoming meetings. And as you can see again, you have dates February 12th, 18th, 15th. Actually, that's wrong. That should be right there. And you move left to right, but you also move from top to bottom is how I use it. So what's due most close from today's date is February 12th to the end of the semester all the way down at April 7th. For the assignment queue, it's the same thing. I went through and found every deliverable that was due for the class and put the dates in for each of the deliverables, and each deliverable becomes a card. As you know, you have past one and past twos. Past two is just, a better version of the past one. And so those are at the bottom of this list. And let me pull the list down, and they're color coded a little bit differently here, which is the final due date there. So then you have work in progress, holding tank, I can talk about in a moment, and then you have the end of the process at the last two columns. Think about it this way. What you're basically going to be doing is you're going to be moving your various meetings or your various assignments from these two first columns into a common work in progress column, which is really going to focus on basically the week's worth of work. And so you can see here, for instance, we're at February 8th, and on February 10th for Steve's class, your performance analysis past one is due. So it's in this card. My team met on Thursday evenings, and so I updated that with this date today, and it's yellow, which is indicating that the due date is soon. We met at 5:15 p.m., so it's coming up. And then here's another deliverable, which was actually a data collection item we did in working up our performance analysis. And this is now a few days overdue. And so we've missed the deadline, at least the way it's reading is we've missed the deadline. So these two cards from these two come over here for the week. And typically then they're going to move out of the work in progress list or column and move over to a holding tank when somebody's done with something. And so you can drag it over here when this is done like this. It's probably going to go at the top since it's the most important deadline, February 10th rather than April 27th. I'm waiting for other people to add their 2 cents. If somebody needs to sign off on it, I'll open up the card in a moment and show you. It's waiting for that before you can complete it and submit it for your course. And then when this gets done and everybody signs off on it and it gets uploaded to Blackboard, you can move it again here, just like that. So you can see what's going to happen is you're going to have this long list of cards on the left, and at the end of class in 3.5 months, you're going to have a long list on the right, and your upcoming meeting list and your assignment queue list are all going to be empty, hopefully, because you've hit all your deadlines, you've had all your meetings, and you've kicked it out. At the end, the way I ended up setting this up, it was I put the assignments, I broke them back out again, and then the meetings again too. For me, it was just easier to read the 2 columns separately, just as I started them separately. Okay, so let me open up a few things and highlight aspects of it that Bob had already mentioned, but I'll show you how this works for an actual class that you're taking. But first, let me answer Bud's question. I just saw it. Bud, it updates in lifetime. So if multiple people are looking at the screen, you will see the change being made as it is made. It refreshes right away for everyone. So that's a really nice feature. We would often have on our weekly meetings, Sarah, maybe you can correct me on this. I want to say, at least I had this open during our weekly meetings, and then we would move the cards around and talk about that during the meetings. Yeah, so it was real helpful. So Steve, to answer your question, you can add other indicators like the red, yellow, green status. I played along with the idea a bit with our color codes. I think I had orange for threat of missing a deadline, red for missed a deadline, and green for hit the deadline. And that would be for these categories up here where we have pass 1, pass 2, optional. And so you could change these color coding tags if you wanted to use it in terms of how healthy the team is in meeting its deadlines. And so Sarah, everybody, Sarah was in the class as well. She was on our team, and so she is commenting in the box. And she said, yeah, she confirmed we did pull up the Trello while we had our meeting so we could all look at it together simultaneously. Steve, to answer your question, I do not know if it provides overall feedback. That would require some sort of calculation function. And since people use Trello for so many different purposes, sometimes they use it, just as a repository of data points rather than deadlines. And so to my knowledge, it doesn't have the ability to talk about percent on schedule.
Hey, William, one hack on that as far as percentage on schedule is to use the checklist items. And depending how you would set up, if you want to show them maybe a card that...
Thank you, right, okay.
Checklist.
Yeah, so let me that's a really excellent point, Bob. I want to open up some of these components anyway to show you how it looks filled out, and I'll look at the percent progress of whether people are meeting deadlines. Let me just open up the first meeting, and I want to go to past meetings. Notice again, I set this up as if I was in your class, in Steve's class. So Steve had a kickoff class meeting on January 8th. I color-coded it for this team as optional. And then you've had one on the 25th, and then you had your first team meeting a few days ago here, right? So those are green, the completed past meetings. So let me look at the one team meeting, the weekly meeting, if I was in Steve's section. Let's open up the card here. And you can see on this card, I have the initials of the members. So that's me, that's Sarah, who's with us in the webinar today. And that's Constance Collins, our third member of the team. And then I ended up, I think, or Sarah, one of us put this description on our, for what we're going to do on the meeting. And we took this from the team charter, actually, to help us this is one of our first meetings to get an idea of what we should be trying to do. Steve had recommended starting meetings this way, so we just put it here. And then we had an agenda item. And these are all the things that as a team, we felt like we needed to talk about for that day. And I believe Sarah managed the meetings, and so she would generally fill out this agenda together. Or she would fill out the agenda, and I would add in sometimes, but she would fill it out and have it ready to go. Other comments people added on the way to the meeting, you have down here. Okay? So you have your description, you have the agenda. If you don't talk about everything on the meeting, so as you go through the meeting, you could just click it off here. And so right now, we've only covered 43% of the agenda for the meeting. And as you go through it, it moves up to 100. So that might get some of the functionality that Steve is asking about in terms of percentage complete. This agenda, by the way, is a checklist. And so I gave it a checklist, and it lets you name it. So I named it for the agenda. And then once you do it, you can add items on this add item button right here. And so checklist is a really fairly powerful tool on the cards because it allows you to build lots of different lists that serve a number of different purposes. One final thing, and I'm not sure if it was clear in Bob's discussion at the start, is how do you know, again, think about people working in different time zones, with different schedules and different parts of the country, different time zones. How do you know if you're doing it, if there's something that you need to pay attention to? A primary way to do that would be to use the @ function. And so when you write a comment, here I am in a comment, I could start writing that comment to Sarah. So I could go @ Sarah, and since she's on the team, it'll automatically pull up her name. I can click it, and then I can write my comments. And why this is really powerful, just like Twitter, is then Sarah will get an email that I mentioned her in this sentence, and she'll get an email of just what that comment is. And so this I think is a supremely powerful tool because on the one hand, you don't have to worry about checking the Trello board throughout the day or even throughout the week because you're going to receive an email about important information that somebody thinks you should be included in because they use the @ function. But then on the flip side, I don't have to worry about using my email as a way to organize what's happening with the class. I'm horrible at that. I can get back to the Trello board and Sarah's comment tied to just the card that it's related to, in this case, our first class meeting, that comment is waiting there for me. So it's a nice way to stay on top of stuff, but not worry about organizing it since Trello's taking care of the organization. So let me pause real fast. I know I just said a lot. Bud was asking about the checklist. Steve, you were asking about the percentage complete. And I was demonstrating the @ function. So 3 different things on this one card. Are there any questions, or did I move through something a bit quickly that I can maybe rephrase or say again for anyone?
William, can you show them the labels, how you can add multiple labels and rename them? Because I think
Sure.
that's really
The labels
powerful.
is right here. And so we've had our labels here. Optional, deadline miss, pass 1, pass 2, data collection. I'm not using that color. I didn't think it would show well. And data collection I chose to use. And I just click the pencil icon and I can create the name for it right there. And then I can choose my color. That's the label function. Bob, let me have you also look at Bud's question as I think out loud about it as well. Bud says, it seems that you need to purchase a plugin if you want to create a single graphic to summarize where your team is with all of their tasks. I don't know if a plugin for that exists. I mean, you can see where the team is with all their tasks by just seeing what they've completed, what they have to complete in the assignment queue column, and then what they're actively working on in the 2 middle columns.
My guess is that there would be a power-up for that. And I think, William, if you click the Show menu up at the top right, you'll see the option to do power-ups. There's thousands of power-ups.
So there's this little power-up button here. This is a master menu up here. and you can choose lots of analytics and reporting, automation, and so you can choose lots of power-ups this way. I will say this about power-ups from my experience. On the one hand, I think you might have that functionality. On the flip side, my experience is just remember you're working with a team with lots of different people who come to working online as well as with computers. We all have very different experiences. And so my experience has been the simpler you can create the Trello board and keep the process as simple as possible, the stronger your board will be, and the more powerful and more functional it'll be for all the team members. Because you want everybody to be able to sit down quickly and get to it and know what's going on so that the team as a team can move forward. I was the only person on my team that had used Trello. Sarah, you were enthusiastic on about day 2, and Constance also, I think, really embraced it at the end, specifically because of the issue of not wanting to lose where somebody's at it on a particular assignment or a particular meeting. So I think that as a whole, the team in the end, it did work well for us, absolutely. So let me show you, keep the questions coming. Let me show you one more card here. And I'm going to show you the TSPR card, the Team Project Status Review cards. And this is in the assignment queue right here. Where's my TSPR card? Here it is. So this is due on February 17th. As Bob said, when you get close to the date, you'll get an email. Everybody on the team will get an email that this is due soon. And you can see who's working on it. We did this one together since it's a team project status review. We didn't always do every assignment together, so this might vary who the members are. Another thing you can see I have with this card, which is important to see, is we use labels for sign-off, because you're going to find that with different schedules, somebody's going to say, okay, I'm done, can I submit it? But somebody else on the team will say, no, I want to look at it, can we wait 6 more hours or another day? Particularly for your past 2 deliverables, in which you, aside from the final deadline at the end of the semester, there is really no set deadline. And so sign-off I found to be a powerful, simple way in which the team could make sure one person signs off on it, they know they're okay, and they move on while it's waiting for the rest of the team. And if that was the case in this, and I signed off on this, I would take this TSPR, and then I would move it over to the holding tank right there. And then I might have it checked right like that, and then it would be waiting for Constance and Sarah. And if I thought that they didn't notice it, I might even write at Sarah, hey, did you see that this is ready for sign-off? Can you look at it when you have a chance? So here's our card again, some communications we had with it. Sarah commenting to me, I'm highlighted here, me commenting to Sarah. And let's see, the last card, if I have anything to do, is I guess this one. It's about the same, just more examples of quite a bit of communication just over the learner analysis past one, and then the sign-off waiting for everybody on the team. Is there anything else? I have one more primary thing to talk about. It's pretty short, but before I move away from Trello for a second, is there any other residual questions that I could answer or Bob could answer about this, particularly as it relates to your class and as a team, what you need to do to get your projects ready, to get all the deliverables done for your projects?
Can you click on the calendar in the upper right-hand corner?
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Bob. I have it on the list. I forgot. The other thing you'll notice with this is that I have a date for every deliverable that's due. The past one is the end of the semester. Other dates are, past 2 is the end of the semester, April 27th. And then the past ones are as they come in, February 7th, March 3rd. But it might be hard for you to see what all you have to do each week to week. And that's why the calendar is so important. So that is the one power-up a lot of people use. Bob mentioned this. I use it too. So I got the calendar power-up, which lives right here. And it puts every one of these cards with their due date on the calendar. So if you ever want to see what you have each week, and you've used the due date function, you click your calendar right there, and it pulls up everything. So you can see that we're on the 8th, that's this week right here, and we're at Thursday. And so if I was in the class, I'd have my meeting today with Sarah and Constance. And then we did data collection on Monday, and then we have, pass one, performance analysis. Here it comes. It's due on Saturday. And you can just move this up and down and view everything week to week or month on the month view, or you can click there and just see that week even easier, just to see what you have going for your week. So this is a nice, easy way to do that. The last thing I'll mention about the calendar is you have this gear icon right here, and you can click this gear icon and you can sync the due dates for all of these deliverables or the meetings with your own personal calendar and have a master calendar view on your side. And so it's a pretty powerful function built in here. Let me go back to the month view. That lets you get an overview of your project as you move through each month and as you move through each week. Michelle, thanks for your comments. I know Sarah's talking to you as well about Google Docs. That's actually my next topic, and show you how we integrated Google tools with Trello. Okay, so that's the calendar view, which I can close out right there with the X and get back to the cards. Anything else before I move on to talk about Google and maybe even Michelle's comments? Sure. So you go to the show menu there, and this is a list of all the activity that anybody's ever done right here. And here's your power-ups right here, bud. And with the power-ups, you can come in here and you can spend many hours playing around with it and finding and playing with things. You might just go in here and just type in calendar, and it'll pull up the calendar power-up right there. You can adjust your background. Again, we can spend hours and hours on this and playing with things. Sure.
And William, someone right off the bat asked if you could search for past things, and you've got that menu pulled up right there. If you click Filter Cards, go back to your Power-Ups menu.
Yeah, you also have that right there. And then
Okay,
you have, so what would I want to do? Would I want to talk about clients? So there's the client mentioned in every single card. The word client is mentioned in. I've not used this very much, but it looks like it's pulling out the card that's part of right there. Okay,
well, there you go.
So let me do, I know time is of the essence, and I appreciate everyone hanging around for this. I want to show you one more thing, and this is where we use Google. And I guess in line with the idea that it's for these sorts of team projects, having a shared platform is really the way to go for the team to be functional and to be able to interact with varying schedules. My team found, and I guess my recommendation to the other teams would be to use a document repository. In other words, keep a separate repository where you put all of your resources and documents for the project. I personally find email incredibly difficult. I find Google Documents incredibly difficult if somebody just shares a single Google document with other people in the team. And Monica, you might have been thinking that. That's how I first learned Google Documents as well, is somebody would share it with me and we'd work on it together. But I think if a better way to go about it would be to create a shared team drive that you set up that has all of the documents that you're going to need to submit. So you have Trello to manage the actual project and the process of moving things through, and you have the Google Drive here to manage your documents. The team drive, we get, notice a little, you have the icon from Boise State, and so with that, you have it with your accounts really easily. You can go to, when you get to the Google Drive, you can click Team Drives right here, and you can create your own team drive. Then you just choose the people that you would share this team drive with, and then everybody always has access to all the documents within this drive. Super helpful, easier than just sharing Google Documents from my experience. You'll notice also what I did here is I took all of our documents that we would need and basically built a file structure. So we have the team charter, team resources, the team project status reviews, and all of the deliverables all the way down to weekly discussions. Later on in the semester, you're going to have to work as a team to craft a discussion post. So we put them here as well. So you can see how it breaks down. Anybody can log in. They can see what they're working on, and they can find the documents pertinent to that. If one team member is doing some research or data collection, they can get that data, and they can come into the resources folder right there, and they can come into the resources for the client, and they can drop some documents in it, just like that. And it's always waiting there for the team. So that's the resources folder. Let me show you one other one here. Sorry, I'm trying to get out of that. Here's our project description folder that you've already submitted. Let me show you how we set this up. So we have project description, and then we put in 2 folders to begin with, pass 1, pass 2. And then the pass 1 folder has our initial submission, and it is a Word document. And then we have Steve's feedback right there, Steve Villachica's feedback, as well as the rubric he provided us. So anybody can come in and see where they were at with that pass 1 and be able to work on it. Looks like it's hard for me to go back when I have this view. I apologize. So then you can go with the pass 2, and then you have the pass 2 we submitted here, and there's just one document because we didn't do anything on it after pass 2. So I guess my overall thoughts with this, and Bob, feel free to jump in here with me as we talk about this, in terms of management. Management is really kind of the core thing every team has to work on, be it in our professional jobs or in this course. I think it's always helpful to clearly establish roles. My recommendation would be to pick one person to manage the organization of Trello, if you choose to use Trello, as well as the team resources, and then get another person to run meetings. And so for our team, for example, I did the Trello and the team resources, this Google Drive that you're looking at here. And Sarah did a stellar job with the team meetings. And so she scheduled all the meetings using the Google Meeting Scheduler, Google Hangouts. And she would keep track of the meeting notes, as I mentioned, or the agenda items. And that was her role. And then our third party, she worked with the client, and she was our SME. And so there was a nice division of labor there for everyone. So again, establish roles. My other recommendation for using Trello as well as the Google Drive is to set everything up first. Get your infrastructure locked in for both the project management platform as well as your document storing platform, and build folders out like that, even if they are empty as you get going, because you're going to get busier as the semester goes on. You're going to be trying to juggle different deadlines with different people's schedules, and the more structure you can have that's simple but functional, I think it'll make your lives a lot easier in terms of the course. Let's see, any other questions on this at this point? In the Google Drive, Trello, something about the Google Drive I haven't mentioned.
Steve had a comment in there about,
William?
why not just Trello for everything as far as documents go?
Steve, my experience with using Trello, let me show everybody. You have a card here. Here's your task analysis, let's say right here, pass 1. So you could go over here and you could take this attachment button and you could attach a document. And that might work great for your team. I mean, of course, there's no right way to do it. It's just the way that works best for those members who are involved. My personal opinion, and for our team, is that just like it's hard to find documents in emails when people attach them, sometimes even the attachments can get buried in the Trello cards like you have here. So while technically they're there, sometimes you lose them. And so that's why I find having a really separate and a clean team drive is helpful. Does that answer the question, Steve?
It's too bad it's an interface limitation, but I get the thinking in terms of wanting to be sure everyone can easily find what you're working on.
Yeah, and maybe another team is really does a great job with attaching documents through Trello board. If you are, I would love to hear from you and hear about your experience using it that way. But on the tutorials, thanks for asking that. Bob actually has a number of resources available that we can show you if you want to really geek out about Trello and learn about all the additional power-ups and keep looking at some demonstrations. Maybe we can turn this over to Bob, and
Yeah, I can
Bob,
pull that
you can
slide.
show them some of the resources that we have prepared for them.
So what I was trying to show earlier when I was pulling up our document is pros and cons, and I can go over these real quick. I think we hammered out most of these. Obviously, pros, it's great for teams physically separated in different time zones. Provides that unified communication and coordination platform. The history, it's easy to use and learn, which we'll talk about that more in a second. It's free, right? Lots of functionality and accessibility at no cost. You get the real-time interaction, the notifications. You can have your own private boards plus public team boards, availability. Cons is mostly around power-ups here, right? You only get one free power-up per board. Integrating advanced project tracking tools requires power-ups. You know, you can do those charts. It's just you're going to have to use your one free power-up. Other advanced functionality requires power-ups. Power-ups might not be worth the extra cost because these are third-party power-ups that programmers did themselves. So not a lot of that's not native Trello stuff, and you cannot generate reports without project statuses. So yeah, I think all the cons are kind of related to power-ups there. But getting to our resources, there's a ton of resources out there. I think Trello's been around for a while, and a lot of people use it. The welcome board, the one I showed you guys right off the bat, that has some real basic tutorials and functionality. So if you went through all those cards, you're going to learn how to use it a little bit. When you first sign up for Trello, you're going to get a welcome email, and that you'll get a couple welcome emails actually. Every week or so, they're going to send you an email with a link to learning new functionality. So they're kind of scaffolding things with Trello. It's really cool because your first email is like the basics, and then a week, 2 weeks later, you're going to get an email. It's like, hey, have you tried this? And every couple of weeks, they send you emails on advanced functionality. But I have a couple of websites on the board. If you go to trello.com/guide, they have a full website full of demos and explanations on how to use everything we've shown you. Trello.com/inspiration has a lot of boards people have posted out that you can go to their actual board and peruse them and see how they're using them. So if you want to get inspired on how to use it in a certain way. There's two of them. There's Trello.com/inspiration and Trello.com/inspiring boards. Both kind of do the same thing. Some people, power users, have given us the ultimate board of Trello tips and tricks. So if you go out to that website, there is this massive board that has all kinds of keyboard shortcuts and tricks and tips, and it's really, if you want to geek out on Trello, that's the one to go to. Trello puts out their own blog. If you just YouTube or Google what you're trying to do in Trello, someone's answered the question out there or has at least tried. So there's no shortage of resources. Yeah, you can absolutely share these slides for sure.
And William, would you be willing to share? Would you be willing to share a version of the Trello setup with for 537?
Sure,
well?
Absolutely. Yeah. At this point, Steve and Bud, I take it you have your teams established. You've stood up your projects, and the teams are doing their first deliverables, and they've had a first meetings. And at this point, they're still probably trying to kind of get organized. Is that right? Okay.
Yes.
Well, then what I can do, and I can probably have it ready tonight. I have it mostly done now. I can provide a sanitized version of my team's board. Basically, that means I take out our participants and all the discussions we had that were pertinent to our project, but it'll have the columns, which are the lists, as well as all the assignments. I do encourage you to check the due dates to make sure I got them right. I don't know if Bud's due dates are different. And I will pass on that information to Steve. Basically, I'll provide some instructions on how to make it your own, as well as a link to go find it. and then your team can make it your own if you want to pursue Trello immediately. And I can have that done tonight.
Thank you.
Alrighty, well, everybody left. I appreciate your time. I know Bob does and Steve does. If there's any questions or any other comments, we're always open to hearing them. I believe that our email addresses were shared on the original announcement for this webinar, so don't hesitate to get in contact with us. And again, thanks for your participation and time.
And thank all of you for meeting with us. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, William. We appreciate your expertise and your willingness to share it with us. This concludes our recorded webinar for today. Thank you for your participation.